let's quickly shuffle a couple of bits around before we jump into the second qualifying stint. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. If you could hit that like button, that'd be absolutely amazing as well. Do massively, massively appreciate that. Let's quickly shuffle that around. Part of Red Bull's plan, helping Red Bull get more development time for 2026. I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, they don't need the money from the championship, but it just gets embarrassing, doesn't it? It's sort of the other side of the coin. Yeah, you get more development time, but sponsors are going to be looking at that and going, why are we sponsoring this team where there's only one car that's competitive? They'll be asking to basically just put their sponsor on one of the two cars, won't they? Here we go once again then. We're going to get underway for qualifying 2. Two Mercedes cars again quickest. Been quickest in every session so far, every single free practice session. Hamilton free practice 1, Hamilton again in free practice 2, Russell in free practice 3 this morning. Now looking quick again in qualifying. And I gotta hold my hands up. Was not expecting the Mercedes car to be this competitive. Okay, yes, it is cooler conditions, which they do prefer. I was still expecting the Ferrari to be kind of the top dog, with maybe the McLaren just behind. The Red Bull's always a little bit of a wild card at the minute. You just don't really know what you're going to get from the Red Bull team at the moment. But Mercedes have jumped into the conversation, and suddenly we're looking at, can Lewis Hamilton or George Russell nab the fastest lap in qualifying and put themselves on pole position? We'll have to wait and see. The Lego Formula 1 collection. Sign me up. Get them, inject it into my veins. As you can see, the McLaren car above my head. Do need the Mercedes one as well, even though I think it's like the same car, but just a Mercedes. One car will be full of actual Red Bull sponsors next year. Yeah. Just the Mexican sponsors on one car. Like Sergio Perez's car, a couple of Kit Kat sponsors, everybody else on Max Verstappen. Why not Tsunoda? He just never is really discussed. Like, Tsunoda just isn't loved by the Red Bull higher-ups, I think is the problem. Helmut Marko loves Liam Lawson. Christian Horner seems to love Sergio Perez, but again is like running out of excuses for Sergio Perez. So it's kind of that to and fro between the two sides of the garage, and nobody really loves Yuki. Like, Christian Horner doesn't really like Yuki Tsunoda that much, it feels. Helmut Marko doesn't really love Yuki Tsunoda that much, it feels. Like, even like the Thai side of the team don't really love Yuki Tsunoda that much. The Austrian part of the team don't love Yuki Tsunoda that much. There's nobody batting for Yuki Tsunoda's corner, unfortunately. Now that the partnership with Honda is sort of winding down, and obviously Honda are moving across to working with Aston Martin from 2026 onwards, it's basically getting to the point where Yuki Tsunoda's seat, even though he's doing really well, because of the way that the Red Bull team is structured and the way that the Red Bull hierarchy is in place, Yuki just can't really get a nose in. Like, unless Yuki Tsunoda scores a ridiculous amount of points and makes it, obvious that he deserves that seat. If you look at it, he's done well as Yuki Tsunoda, but it's not like he's been ridiculously quicker than Liam Lawson in the 3 races that they've had. Like, as I said, I've looked at that chart so many times. The 10 sessions that we've had since Liam Lawson has come onto the track, and it's pretty close. Like, pretty close running between Yuki, Lawson, and you could argue that Lawson's kind of been that little bit better in the 3 races that we've had, the 10 competitive sessions, including sprints. You could argue that Lawson, considering the circumstances, being dropped into that team so late in the season, probably done the better run. But There are 2 streams showing up. There are indeed. There is a shorts stream. So if you're watching on mobile, you can watch in the vertical format. Or if you're watching sort of on your TV, on your computer, there is also a horizontal, or the more traditional format for you available. So yeah, there are 2 streams available now. Something, again, we're just trialing a few things at the end of the season. We're trialing a little podcast. We're seeing how that goes. We're going, trying the little turning point, having a few guests on, running some longer form content, seeing how that goes. And we're also just trying some side-by-side streams. We're trying some vertical and horizontal streams. Zhou Guanyu outqualified Sergio Perez. He did indeed. Zhou Guanyu, the sole stakes Sauber through. Perez, Alonso, Albon, Bottas, and Stroll, the 5 drivers to drop out. And we're now starting to get some times in for Q2. So 10 times through, although a few of those towards the bottom, not competitive times. Verstappen going again. Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda, Lawson all going again. Hamilton, quickest so far. Nico Hülkenberg, a 10th off the pace. Here comes Lando Norris, though, and is just a 10th off Lewis Hamilton's lap time in the McLaren car. Max Verstappen then displaces Lando Norris and jumps up into 2nd place. 10 minutes to go in this session. Oscar Piastri, 1,000th of a second slower than Lewis Hamilton. That is obscene, isn't it? It's just absolutely ridiculous. 1,000th of a second. That is just how close it is between those top teams right now, and Mercedes joining that fight this weekend. At least in qualifying, it looks like Kevin Magnussen jumps up into the top 10. So does Liam Lawson in the RB. He goes 9th fastest. Still a 2nd off the pace, though, Liam Lawson, and struggling. Tsunoda having a much better afternoon. So talking about that comparison between the 2 of them. Yuki Tsunoda looking much more comfortable in that new style RB car for this weekend. I say new style, it's not any upgrades or anything, just a new look to the RB. Hamilton win in Vegas? That'd be very cool. That would be very cool indeed. Gasly jumps up into the top 10, drops his teammate Esteban Ocon into that bottom 5. So we're just waiting for the 2 Ferraris. You're assuming that they're going to jump up. So it's Zhou Guanyu, Lawson, Ocon, Colapinto, and Gasly, the 5 drivers that at the moment would need to improve. See if they can improve. Carlos Sainz now running around for the Ferraris. As I say, expecting the 2 Ferraris to jump up fairly comfortably into the top 10. '26. Let's have a little look from Carlos Sainz. Yeah, he's looking on it as Carlos Sainz by the looks of things. I think the Ferrari will be fine. Where's the Ferrari at the bottom? They just haven't set a fast lap time yet. Max Verstappen coming around. Fastest in the first sector, Max Verstappen. It is that 3rd sector that is the real tricky one for Max Verstappen, though, and the Red Bull team. That super long straight, I guess technically has turn 13 in it, but turn 13 is not really a turn. So all the way from 12 to 14, you are just flat out all the way down that Vegas strip. Ooh, that's Verstappen running it very close to the wall. He's 3/10 up on Lewis Hamilton as they come towards the end of the 2nd sector. See what Max Verstappen can do here then. Albon has been completely outclassed by Colapinto. Colapinto needs to get a seat. Colapinto linked to that RB spot, isn't he? Again, talked about that with Pit Stop Nick earlier in the week. But I agree. I think looking at Colapinto's performances, you could argue he's been the more consistent Williams driver of the entire season. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz getting in their first lap times, but not flying lap times as of yet for the Ferraris. Feels like the Ferraris are just going for that one run, maybe. Or maybe they'll go back-to-back flying cars. Here we go. George Russell goes quickest in the first sector. So far, George Russell also quickest in the second sector, and Russell is absolutely flying here. He was fastest in the first qualifying session, looking to go back-to-back at the top of the timing sheets, just coming down back straight is George Russell down towards turn 14. If he gets this right, it should be a very swift time from George Russell in the Mercedes car. A lot of cars have just come back into the pits, though, so Mercedes going early in terms of getting their lap time done and dusted. It's a 132.8 from George Russell, and it was a poor final sector, actually, from George Russell in comparison to what we could have seen from him. Same from Lewis Hamilton, actually. A little bit slower in that final sector. And Carlos Sainz comes across the line. Oh, only 5th fastest. I was expecting them to be a little bit closer to the Mercedes car there. Carlos Sainz's Ferrari, not so. Charles Leclerc, though, does get a little bit closer to the back of the Mercedes cars. So is that top 7, as you'd kind of expect? The 2 Mercedes, the 2 Ferraris, the 2 McLarens, and a singular Red Bull. The top 7, as you would think, going into the final qualifying session at the moment. Still 4.5 minutes for people to upset the apple cart. Lando Norris, the driver under pressure the most at those top 7. Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, and Magnussen, the 3, joining them for that qualifying finale at the moment. Gasly, Colapinto, Ocon, Lawson, and Zhou, the 5 drivers that need to improve. And if they don't, they'll be joining Sergio Perez, Fernando Alonso, Alex Albon, Valtteri Bottas, and Lance Stroll as the 5 drivers who are already out of qualifying. They were 16th to 20th fastest in terms of that first qualifying session. Yeah, Gasly closest to getting into the top 10 at the moment. Colapinto, the sole Williams car out there on track. Alex Albon dropping out in 18th spot. Both of the Aston Martins also went out, which means we only have 1 Stake Sauber in Zhou Guanyu as well, because Valtteri Bottas joined that bottom 5. Zhou Guanyu, though, currently 15th fastest of everybody. Lando Norris, it's a slow lap time. Just warming up those tyres, I imagine, in the McLaren car. Needs to get a little bit close to those top teams. Oh, no, maybe not. I think Lando Norris might actually be on a push lap. It was just a very poor first sector. I sort of saw yellow and just assumed, oh, yeah, okay, that'll be another warm-up lap for Lando Norris. But no, green through the middle sector. So Lando Norris is on a flying lap. Needs to improve pretty substantially in that final sector. Dear. John Wick Gaming, hello, mate. Can I show the cars racing? That would be very, very illegal. What's my race prediction? I think all predictions are kind of out of the window, unfortunately. If you asked me sort of 3-4 days ago, I'd have had Ferrari and McLaren top 2, then Mercedes and Red Bull kind of in a little bit of a mix behind, with probably Max Verstappen still swifter than the Mercedes cars, but the Mercedes looking properly involved. And then behind that, You know, you do expect the Hasses to be pretty swift here, to be fair, and they're doing the business. But Yuki Tsunoda's a little bit of a surprise for me. Tsunoda currently running. Ooh, Zhou Guanyu getting in the way of Carlos Sainz a little bit there. Carlos Sainz trying to jump the queue a touch as everybody is trying to get across the start-finish line with 1 minute left on the clock. This is our final runs for a lot of these drivers. Russell and Hamilton starting their final flying laps. We've also got Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Sainz also just coming across the start-finish line. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri joining the back of the queue. I don't know if they're already on flying laps, though. Norris and Piastri, they're coming down the back straight at this moment. Here goes Oscar Piastri then. 4th fastest is Oscar Piastri. Should be enough to get him through. Lando Norris pulls into the pits. Couple attempts off the pace. But again, expecting that top 7 to be fairly comfortably through as it is. See if George Russell and Lewis Hamilton can up their game. What do I think about GM coming into Formula 1? Brilliant. Yeah, amazing. That's sort of a huge name in motorsport like that. And a huge name just in cars in general, right? Coming into Formula 1. Massive. Massive. Love to see it. I've always been a big advocate for more teams, more seats. You know, would be great. 11 teams excessive? Not at all. I think as long as they're competitive, as long as you don't end up with a situation that we had sort of in the early 2010s where we had 13 teams, but 3 of them might as well have not been there. And obviously they were the 3 that eventually fell away. As long as they come in, they take it seriously, they're competitive, they get in the mix. Can't understand why you wouldn't want that. Zhou Guanyu comes across the line. Not good enough. So here we go then. Let's get into this final fight. Liam Lawson comes into the pits. Liam Lawson will not improve. So, oh! And there's Franco Colapinto and that Williams car in pieces. That's going to be it then. 4th fastest car is Pierre Gasly jumps up 4th there. And Colapinto's in the wall. And that is exactly the opposite of what the Williams team needed to see. They are already on their knees in terms of parts for that Williams car. Franco Colapinto might have got it through to Q2. Fair enough. He's outperformed Alex Albon there. But there's that I think is more substantial. And that, I think, will be a big, big hit to Williams's final few races. You know, they're putting together the car using spare parts here, there, and everywhere at the minute. And now let's see. I mean, they do have spare parts, but they're running out of spare parts is the thing. What actually happened there? So brushes the wall, does Franco Colapinto. See the onboard here. Down towards final couple of corners. Oh, he just gets too close to the wall. Just clip the wall on the inside at turn 15, 16. Turned in. Tried to gauge it. I think he's tried to, you know, do that thing where you get millimeters from the wall. He's tried to brush the wall. He hasn't brushed the wall. He's clipped it, and I think that is that's just a driver error, I'm afraid, for Franco Colapinto. And as soon as he clips the wall on the left-hand side of the, so he clips the wall on the inside of the corner. As soon as you do that, you're barreling towards the barriers on the right-hand side of the track there. And it's come to a stop, a fair distance down that sort of straight between turn 16 and turn 17. It's Franco Colapinto's car. But he put an end to that. Hulkenberg managed to sneak through So did Tsunoda, and Pierre Gasly came across the line 4th fastest. He has really found an absolute run in this final few races. I know Gasly normally has a pretty good end to the season. I remember him having a very good end to 2023, but the end of 2024 looking pretty sublime for Pierre Gasly at this point in time. Oh, that is a heavy shunt with the barriers, actually. Now looking at the barriers have been displaced by Franco Colapinto's car. So, thank you for subscribing, Mr. Ed, to the channel. Massively appreciate it, mate. Especially on this kind of stream. I feel like the viewership is a little bit lower with it very, very early in the UK. So I appreciate you guys coming out. My viewers from around the world representing in the chat. A lot of people from the UK not getting up this early for a qualifying session. No, if you could hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well if you are brand new here. Trying to hit 110,000 subscribers before the end of the season. We hit that 100,000 mark around about Singapore. Did incredibly well to get to 100,000 this season. Was not expected it at the beginning of the year. In fact, I set the target at the beginning of the year at 50,000. So if we can get to 110, that is absolutely obscene. So thank you so much for all of the support in recent race weekends. Doesn't go amiss. It is a huge, huge benefit to the channel. If you could hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, it helps out a huge amount. Then let's have a little look then. Franco Colapinto. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a tidy up. As I say, that the wall has been pretty heavily sort of moved to the right-hand side there. See the onboard again. Goes to turn 14. It's pretty smooth. And then it is just, yeah, I think he's just misjudged it. It's just a misjudgment from Franco Colapinto. There's not really any more to say from that. It is a driver error. It doesn't look like car has made any kinds of faults or anything like that along the way. He's just tried to get as close to the wall as humanly possible. And just got a little bit too close, you know? A little bit too close. It's kind of that Formula 1 chicken that you have, isn't it? You know, the closer you can get to the wall, the faster you can go. So you've got to consider that when you're a Formula 1 driver. You've almost got to play chicken with yourself to judge that distance. And Franco Colapinto just judged that distance that little bit too poorly. James Vowles frowns, looks on. Another Williams car, another huge crash. Just, yeah. They've obviously, well, what's this? The 5th crash that they've had in 3 weekends. You're looking at Mexico, a little bit of a shunt for Franco Colapinto and Lawson. Obviously, Brazil was just a disaster. Alex Albon didn't even take part in the Brazil race. Franco Colapinto also put the Williams car in the wall again after crashing in qualifying and then in the Grand Prix. So this is now the 3rd session in a row that Franco Colapinto has crashed as well, by the way. Which is maybe something to think about. It's a shame. It's one of those things. Like, I was doing a bit of background research, as I say, when I was doing the podcast with Pit Stop Nick, just to try and get that background information on Franco Colapinto, and he's been really consistent through Formula 2 and Formula 3. Okay, he hadn't been the swiftest. I don't think you could argue that Franco Colapinto is not the fastest Formula 2 driver or the fastest Formula 3 driver or anything like that. But what he had been is very, very good at keeping it clean, which I think was one of the reasons James Vowles did end up picking Franco Colapinto for that seat over Logan Sargent. Was, okay, we need another driver in there. We're not going to convince one of, the more experienced drivers on the Formula 1 grid to slot in for 9 races at the end of the season. So I think they went to Franco Colapinto because of that reason. It was one of the reasons, you know. He hadn't crashed very many times in Formula 2 and Formula 3. Been pretty consistent throughout. Now, 3 sessions in a row. 5 crashes for Williams over the course of the last few weekends. It's not looking good. Not looking good at all. But Williams and Franco Colapinto, as much as I've loved him coming into the sport, I'm a big advocate for him. If he can get into that RB seat and Liam Lawson ends up at Red Bull, I think that will be more fun than just having Sergio Perez on the grid for another year. I'm sorry, Sergio. I think you've had your time. You've run your length in Formula 1. But if Colapinto is going to do this kind of thing every weekend, I don't think we can then justify his position on the Formula 1 grid, you know. Yep, you can outdo your teammate in terms of qualifying. Yep, okay, you can, you know, he's qualified 14th there to Alex Albon's 18th. Fair enough. You've outdone Alex Albon, something that Logan Sargent couldn't do, to be fair. But we have to ask those questions as well about, especially for a team, you know, in that midfield pack, if he is going to sort of stay along, if he's going to get that RB seat, RB are in a similar situation to Williams. You know, RB are pretty much one of the closest competitors to Williams that you could possibly have. Shame. Shame, shame, shame. You can say that Aston Martin is slow because they got out-qualified by Perez and Joe. I think the Aston Martin team have just kind of come to the realization that they can't be bothered with the rest of this year. And I think that's fair enough. You know, that they're in a little bit of a no man's land. They're just... Are they going to get anywhere in terms of the Drivers' Championship? Probably not. Like, Fernando Alonso, definitely not. Lance Stroll, unlikely. Are they going to get anywhere in terms of the Constructors' Championship? No. They're guaranteed to finish where they are. Like, they got all of their points to the front end of the season. You know, they front-loaded this year. They were the team that benefited from Mercedes' slow start to the year. Ferrari's kind of minimal, sort of slowish start to the year as well, you could argue. Sorry, not Ferrari. McLaren's slowish start to the year. You know, Aston Martin were the team that picked up those points then when they were available, particularly Fernando Alonso, and therefore Aston Martin have kind of separated themselves from the midfield pack throughout the entire year, and it's kind of shown. I think they just haven't really put as much effort as possible into this year's car as they could, and I think they've got one eye on 2026 and the fact that they've finished their wind tunnel now, they've finished their factory now. They can start 2026 almost afresh. The first time they'll be designing an Aston Martin car from scratch in their new facility. It's kind of 2026 is the one, isn't it? You'll say this, but James Vance should have known the risk of bringing in a rookie into the car. Very true. As I say, it was a rookie with a good record in terms of crashes. Yes, a rookie, but a rookie who hadn't crashed very much at all in Formula 2 or Formula 3. And also, you've got all of the simulator running as well to have a look at. You know, how many times did he crash in the simulator? Which, you know, probably does happen for these Formula 1 drivers. Like, I imagine it happens more than you think. They crash the car in the simulator because they are pushing it to the limit a little bit. They're trying to find those nuances. They're trying to find those little extra margins that they can gain and get that into their rhythm. So I imagine they crash quite a bit when it comes to simulator running. Maybe, again, Franco Colapinto was quick in the simulator and wasn't crashing in the simulator. Whereas Logan Sargent maybe is a little bit slower in the simulator. There's so many things that we don't know behind the scenes. But as I say, Franco Colapinto had a very good record in Formula 2 and Formula 3 in terms of not putting that car into the barriers, basically. Mechanical issues, fair, but issues that he actually caused, less so. This is painful. 3 sessions in a row, qualifying in Brazil, now qualifying in Brazil. The Grand Prix in Brazil was a huge shunt. This is similar in terms of size, to be honest. Like all of the wheels off that car, front wing, rear wing destroyed, side pods on the right hand side completely caved in. Like it's going to be effectively a brand new Williams car that they need, assuming that chassis is still runnable in one way or another. Damage to the floor as well, so whole new floor needed for that Williams car. Yeah, it's not looking good at all for Franco Colapinto, unfortunately. We are just getting a little bit of a time signaling. Should be underway for Q3 fairly swiftly. The Colapinto car has now been removed from the circuit, at least. Just sweeping up the debris and putting the barrier back together. Let's have a little look. Yeah, a little bit of a mistake from Franco Colapinto, isn't it? You just, again, even with the replays now, playing them in slow-mo, he's just judged it wrong. And the problem is the speed that you're carrying through those corners is just tough. Kabir, not a fan of anybody by the looks of things. Thank you, Sally. Yeah, I think the FIA there just taking some pictures of the Williams car. Not saying Colapinto's done a bad job, just saying about, oh yeah, of course. Higher chance from crashing as a rookie, of course. But that's the thing as well at the end of the day, isn't it? It's like, if you end up, what other choice do they have? Logan Sargent had kind of run his course. Logan Sargent, in James Vowles' eyes, needed replacing. You know, they'd given him very clear instructions, and then he'd completely ruined that. You know, they given him very clear instructions, and then he'd had a Zandvoort weekend that was absolutely atrocious, and he'd smashed up the Williams car as well. So it was like, okay, Logan Sargent needs replacing. And then they didn't have too many options, was the thing, right? They maybe had a chat with Liam Lawson, but Liam Lawson ended up slotting into RB to replace Daniel Ricciardo. Who else was there? Who else would you say? There's not really that sort of super experienced reserve driver that they could call upon. You know, a couple of years ago, it would have maybe been Nick de Vries. Nico Hulkenberg was sort of available as a reserve driver, a test driver, whatever. But now, you're looking at the test drivers and the reserve drivers for all of the different teams. Not really anybody with a lot of experience. And then, I think, what, Mick Schumacher might have been the only one in the, like, I'm sort of thinking Williams, Mercedes, that kind of realm. Because Drugovich, Aston Martin, Behrman for Ferrari. Again, you're like, a lot of the options aren't great. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Mega. Mick Schumacher, maybe the one. Isaac Hadjar's a rookie. Like, Isaac Hadjar was also Formula 2, you know. There's no super experienced reserve driver that they could have got in. So Franco Colapinto was kind of the only choice that they had, maybe, in the end. I think Alpine can pass Aston Martin. You are insane. I mean, they'd need another absolute miracle. They'd need Brazil again, basically. Maybe Brazil again and a bit more. Have they put up a graphic to say what time Q3 will start? They haven't yet, actually. That was what I was just trying to look for a second ago. I was like, maybe I'll have a little look. But I think it's there's damage to the barrier. So the barrier on the sort of left-hand side of the track or inside of the track at turn 15, 16 is all good. But the outside, he hit the wall on the inside, broke the front left wheel. And at that point, your brakes are effectively null and void. So big shunt onto the wall on the right-hand side of the track, and then some damage to the barrier itself. It's carrying a lot of speed, Colapinto. Like, if you look at the graphic, it's a little bit hard to see, but if you look at where turn 16 is, so he hit the wall effectively just after turn 16, and then came to a stop maybe 2/3 of the way towards turn 17, carrying a lot of speed. Franco Colapinto. No more points for Aston Martin? No. Aston Martin are solely on the beach right now. Right. I kind of said it coming into the final 6 races of the year. I think it's even more pertinent coming into the final 3 races of the year. Fernando Alonso might as well just have the rest of the season off. Like, Fernando Alonso could have easily had the final 6 races of the year off and still finished exactly where he is in both standings. Like, absolutely nothing. 8 points in each of the last Grand Prix weekends. Yeah, but 8 points is a lot. I know. Like 8 points for Red Bull or 8 points for Ferrari is not a lot. 8 points for any of the teams outside of the top 4 is a lot of points. A lot of points. So, yeah. Nico Hülkenberg has had a brilliant season. 21 races that have been great for Nico Hülkenberg, and he scored 31 points. And he's been the best of the midfield drivers. Outside of Fernando Alonso, if you count him as part of the midfield. So 31 points in 21 races. And you're now saying to Pierre Gasly that he's got an average 8 points per race. I know Ocon is kind of in the mix as well there, but Ocon doesn't quite have the same spec as Gasly. Oh no, they're on even spec now, aren't they? So yeah, maybe 8 points. 8 points is a lot, though. A lot. Shout out, please. Sure. Divish? What's the earliest McLaren or Ferrari can win the Constructors? Ooh, I haven't even looked, to be honest. There's still a lot of points available in the Constructors, is the thing. I mean, there's still 86 points available in the driver's standings. So there's still a lot of points to play for. Let's have a think, shall we? So we've got 26 plus 18 is... God, I shouldn't have got this early. 44. So you can score 44 points in a Grand Prix weekend. There's 3 of those. So 44 times 3. 120, 132. There's 132 points available in Grand Prix, plus 15 from the sprint. So there's 147 points available in the Constructors' Championship. Yeah. So there's 147 available. You can take off 44 for this weekend, and so on. 15 for the sprint, 44 again for the Grand Prix. And it's pretty close. So I think, honestly, the Constructors will likely go all the way down to Abu Dhabi. Because I can't imagine Ferrari being 44 points ahead or McLaren being 44 points ahead going into Abu Dhabi. So I think it might go all the way down to the wire. But as I say, the likelihood of one of those teams scoring all of those points, that means a 1-2 for both of your drivers in all of the sessions that are left, effectively. So you need a 1-2 in this Grand Prix, a 1-2 in the sprint in Qatar, a 1-2 in this Grand Prix in Qatar, and a 1-2 in Abu Dhabi. Very unlikely. But yeah, 147 points available at this point in time. That will drop to 103 after this race weekend. So McLaren, I don't think, can be 103 points ahead going into Qatar. So Qatar would definitely be the earliest that they could win it. And that would only be if things go perfectly. Good question, though. Some great mental maths here at 7 o'clock in the morning when I've been up for 3 hours. That car looks like it's got blown up. Yeah, it was heavy. Heavy shunt. The problem was, because he clipped the inside wall quite considerably, didn't have the option of slowing down, was the thing. So just all of that speed that he was carrying, effectively, like, if you just turned off the steering wheel, effectively, right? So, because he lost his front left tire, just couldn't steer once he's hit the wall. So as soon as he's hit the wall, he's carrying all of that momentum straight line into the wall in front of him. So it was a big shunt. And as I say, that's why he ended up, what, 2/3 of the way down that straight, even though he'd hit the wall at the beginning of it. So we are going to get underway fairly soon, though. Don't worry. Yeah. Just making sure that barrier is put back together again, just in case anybody else does the same thing, right? You'd rather have a little bit of a wait here than rush it back on. Somebody hit that wall again and it not be safe and marshals get injured or a driver gets injured or, you know, that is not what we want. I don't think he knows or he doesn't want to tell us. Yeah, it's just a secret. No, nobody knows when it's going to resume as of yet. That's the thing. The race director has not decided when it is going to resume. Because they have to wait. They have to wait for the marshals to sort of give the yes. They have to wait for the track to be fully clear. They're clearing up all the debris. There was a lot of carbon fiber all over the place. And then, as I say, the barrier being put back together again is incredibly. I'm going to fall asleep if it doesn't start now. I can't tell you, it's a secret. That's the whole point. That's what space is saying. I'm not allowed to tell you. It's a secret. Car hit the barrier? Yeah. Indeed. Franco Colapinto. Oh, there you go. 3 minutes. 3 minutes until start. Ian beat me to it. 3 minutes until we will get underway for the final qualifying session of the Vegas Grand Prix. We are $400 riding on Mercedes, getting top 5 in quali. Never been a gambling man, but good luck to you, Kyle. Appreciate it. Not a gambling man myself. Here we go. Oh, 2 more minutes just to catch you up in terms of qualifying that we've had so far. So we are into qualifying 3. We are into the showdown for pole position here in Las Vegas in just a minute and a half's time. But we have had 10 drivers drop out. So Lance Stroll was the slowest of anybody. He'll start in 20th place tomorrow. Team did a good job to get his car back together again, but couldn't put in the performance to get it through into Q2. Valtteri Bottas will start just ahead of him in 19th place. Alex Albon was 18th fastest, with Fernando Alonso 17th fastest in front of him. Sergio Perez, the final driver to drop out in Q1. The Mexican, again, disappointing in that Red Bull car. So they were the 5 drivers to drop out in Q1, and they'll start 16th to 20th. Then Liam Lawson was the slowest man in Q2. He dropped out in 15th spot. Franco Colapinto's crash and that he only managed 14th. Zhou Guanyu was 13th fastest. Kevin Magnussen 12th. And Esteban Ocon, the closest man to getting into the top 10 shootout. He was 11th fastest in his Alpine. So Esteban Ocon, super close, but didn't quite join his teammate in the top 10. The top 7, as expected, missing Sergio Perez from the top 4 teams, but both of the Mercedes cars are in the mix, both of the Ferraris, both of the McLarens. Max Verstappen, as you'd expect, being the Drivers' World Championship leader, is inside of that top 10. But then we have Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, and Nico Hülkenberg in an Alpine, an RB, and a Haas that are joining those 7 drivers for this final qualifying session as we get into it. Here we are then. Max Verstappen is going to be the first man out on track. Max Verstappen's going to get us underway for the final qualifying session here in Vegas. Could this be the weekend that he crowns himself a 4-time Formula One world champion? Lando Norris will be trying to keep himself in the fight. Needs a 3-point swing in his favor, does Lando Norris, to keep the dream alive. Piastri, though, between the two of them right now. Gasly and Leclerc having a little tete-a-tete. The two very close friends off track, but Gasly wanting to get ahead of Leclerc on track. Leclerc not wanting that to be the case. Yuki Tsunoda also coming around turn 7 near the sphere. Carlos Sainz, Hamilton, Hülkenberg, all out on track as it stands. Going to see a couple of warm-up laps here, though. Yeah, track still pretty cool. Getting later and later for the guys out in Vegas. Would it be 10 past 11 for them now out on the Vegas circuit? Max Verstappen getting out first, wanting to get this done and dusted, I think, in the Red Bull car. Let's see if this is a full flying lap from Max Verstappen or whether it's going to be another warm-up lap. I'm expecting another warm-up lap, to be honest, but you never know. I don't know. No, he is not going for it. Preparing the tyres is Max Verstappen. 10 minutes on the clock in Q3. All 10 drivers are now out on the circuit. What do I think about Colapinto to Red Bull or RB? I discussed that in a lot more depth than I will have the time to at this point with Pit Stop Nick in this week's The Turning Point. Just search The Turning Point, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. It's all available everywhere you get your podcasts. And that would massively help me out. In fact, whilst we're here, I can give a little bit of a shout out to that and maybe just ask a favor. Head over to whatever podcast app you have and maybe just, give it a download. Hit that 5-star button on the whatever podcast app you use. If you've got a Spotify account, search The Turning Point. Give it a little thumbs up. Give it a 5-star rating. Maybe leave a little review. Same with Apple Podcasts. That would massively, massively help me out. Like, the podcast is doing pretty well in terms of download numbers, but just helping it out, leaving a little review would be very, very grateful for that. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris coming around, but again, going for a fast lap by the looks of things. Oscar Piastri at 1:33.5 from Oscar Piastri. Lando also coming pretty quickly behind him. Sainz has been quickest. Carlos Sainz been fastest in the first and second sector as Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc 1:33.7. Carlos Sainz is looking like the man to beat at the moment. He can just put together a fairly comfortable final sector. Max Verstappen is going around 1:33 dead, a couple of attempts quicker than Lando Norris and fairly comfortably the quickest actually. Carlos Sainz goes to the top of the timing sheets. Max Verstappen Not purple in the first sector. George Russell, though, is. George Russell 2.5 temps up in the first sector alone. That Mercedes car, the cooler conditions absolutely coming to life. Max Verstappen goes quickest in the middle sector of anybody so far. Final sector has been a little bit of a struggle for the Red Bull throughout the qualifying session so far. So not expecting Max Verstappen to take provisional pole here. But definitely to jump up into the mix. George Russell still a couple of attempts quicker through that second sector. So George Russell looking to jump to the top of the timing sheet for certain at this point. Here comes Max Verstappen. Couple attempts off the pace. Yeah, kind of expected that from Max Verstappen, considering very, very solid middle sector from the Red Bull. Carlos Sainz still quickest of anybody at the moment, but here comes George Russell round the final corner in the Mercedes car and comfortably to the top of the timing sheet, a 132.8 from George Russell's Mercedes car. Very, very swift indeed from George Russell. Still a lot of laps to be completed though. Pierre Gasly has come into the pits. He's the quickest of those drivers in the back of the pack. In fact, Charles Leclerc's in the mix there, isn't he? Gasly, Hülkenberg, Tsunoda currently the standings of those three, but Charles Leclerc is in 8th place between them. Hamilton, though, made a mistake. Just went a little bit too deep, did Lewis Hamilton. I think down at turn 12. Yeah, it was down at turn 12, Lewis Hamilton. And easily done, though. His tyres not quite in the window that you wanted them to be in. Expecting more from Lewis Hamilton, considering the pace of the Mercedes car this weekend does look to be outstanding. He's going to have another set of soft compound tyres somewhere, I'm sure. But I think the papaya rules are unfair for Oscar. Not anymore, because they've rescinded them effectively. So the rules have gone back to what they were before Monza. George Russell wants to be at the back. Thinks the track is going to ramp up. Wants to be on the track as late as possible. And here comes another kind of game of chicken that the Red Bull teams have to play. We were talking about Franco Colapinto playing chicken with the wall. The rest of the teams, it's also getting yourselves out on track at just the right point in time so that you can still get around. You're not, completely hindered by a yellow flag or a red flag or anything like that. Well, red flag at this point would be the end, but you're not completely hindered by a yellow flag if there is one. But at the same time, you want to be last out. The track is developing. George Russell making that point, wants to be the last man out on the circuit. Thank you, Edgar, for subscribing to the channel. Yeah, Charles Leclerc, a little bit out of shape at turn 7, just bobbled across. Ooh, went super wide through turn 8 as well. It's a shame. That's where Charles Leclerc lost his time. I was thinking Charles Leclerc a little bit out of position there. I mean, Lewis Hamilton the same. Imagine Leclerc and Hamilton are going to jump up into at least the top 7 positions. Gasly, Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, currently the 3 drivers joining them in that top 10 shootout. And in that order, Gasly be jumping to 8th, you'd imagine. Hülkenberg down to 9th. Tsunoda maybe down to 10th. But all starting inside of the point scoring places. George Russell. Ooh, getting dramatically close to the wall. I think maybe even touched the wall there. Turn 5. A little bit of the T-Mobile hoarding. It is indeed. Yeah, it did touch the wall with the rear left tyre of the car, did George Russell. Just took a little bit of the paint off that T-Mobile advertising. You can see at the bottom, actually, where all the cars have just clipped a little bit of paint off of that wall. Why did everyone enter the pits? To change tyres. So in qualifying, you want as fresh a tyres as possible. The fresher the tyres, the quicker they will be. So everybody jumped into the pits. New set of boots on the car. And then back out again for your final qualifying run. Previous polls, they're just showing up. Charles Leclerc, 2023, obviously holds the lap record here as well. Until that is definitely broken during this qualifying session. And then Prost, the most recent other pole position sitter in Las Vegas. Does it, you know, it's a historic track, is the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Completely redone, though, of course. Brand new track for when it was added to the calendar in 2023. Didn't it used to be in the car park or something? I've forgotten now. Like, I do that kind of research and then it just disappears out of my memory. It's in like the car park of the casino or something, wasn't it? The old Las Vegas Grand Prix. Just sort of put some cones out. Like, there you go, lads. Have a drive about. How it was 40 years ago. Here we go then. 1 minute and 30 seconds on the clock. George Russell, the fastest man out on track at the moment. Yeah, the Caesars Palace GP. Thank you. Caesars Palace. Carlos Sainz, second fastest at the moment for Ferrari. Max Verstappen would be starting on the podium places. Norris and Piastri behind him 4th and 5th. Gasly 6th. Hülkenberg 7th. Charles Leclerc 8th. Yuki Tsunoda 9th. And Hamilton, the only driver to set a fast lap time. But here we go. Oscar Piastri, a couple attempts off through the first sector. A little bit disappointing for him. He'll be looking to improve. The Australian trying to get back into the swing of things. A little bit off the pace, you would say, Oscar Piastri, in the sort of the 3 Grand Prix that we've had since that second summer break that we had. Wasn't quite as on it as he was post-summer break, but Piastri will be looking to get back into the swing of things here in Vegas. Still a couple attempts to drift of George Russell's lap time, though. Oscar Piastri is going to be the first across the start-finish line. And George Russell is indeed at the back of the pack, as he asked for. So George Russell right at the back. And Lewis Hamilton is not very happy at all with the balance of the rear end of that Mercedes car. It's too late now, Lewis. It is the time. Indeed, it is crunch time. Here comes Oscar Piastri then, the first man across the start-finish line. Charles Leclerc has just gone fastest in the middle sector. Oscar Piastri 1:33 dead, puts him 3rd fastest overall. A couple attempts to drift of George Russell's time as it stands. Lando Norris goes a little quicker than his teammate, does jump up into 2nd spot, but still a couple attempts off. Charles Leclerc puts himself on provisional pole. Can he go back-to-back pole positions for Ferrari in Vegas? He's trying his best to. Nico Hülkenberg goes quicker than Verstappen, goes up into 6th place. Here comes Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton stays 10th. Hamilton 10th fastest. Carlos Sainz goes 3/10 quicker than his teammate. Here comes Pierre Gasly. Has just gone a 1:32.6 in the Alpine. Yuki Tsunoda jumps up into 6th spot. So Verstappen and Russell, the 2 drivers to come. Verstappen was slow through the middle sector. He only goes 4th fastest. So it is George Russell. He was quickest through the first sector, a good middle sector, and Russell does take pole. Russell jumps up to pole position for Mercedes. The fastest man in Las Vegas is George Russell. Carlos Sainz will start in 2nd place. Pierre Gasly starts on the podium places. Are we in an alternate universe? What on earth has happened to the Alpine car? Are we looking at back-to-back Alpine podiums? What on earth? Pierre Gasly, take a bow. He has absolutely smashed it. George Russell getting the congratulations on the radio that he massively deserves. He has been on it today. Lewis Hamilton is going to be absolutely livid, though, isn't he? Absolutely livid. And yeah, Max Verstappen has indeed out-qualified Lando Norris. And Lando Norris needs a 3-point gain on Verstappen to still run into the Qatar Grand Prix weekend. Ouch. Round of applause for Gasly. Indeed. What happened to Lewis? He just lost the rear end of the car, made either a little mistake or the car just wasn't quite in the window that he wanted. Let's have a little look. They're replaying it now, actually, the Lewis Hamilton incident. Let's have a little... Yeah, just got all out of shape, lost the rear end of the car. Big understeer from Lewis Hamilton. Wasn't anything that Lewis Hamilton could really do there, to be honest. Just the rear end of the car stepped out. And that was it for Lewis Hamilton. In this one, George Russell takes pole position. To quickly round out those top positions then, George Russell will start on pole position for tomorrow's Grand Prix. We're going to be live for that Grand Prix, so make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We'll be back live for that Grand Prix when it happens. Carlos Sainz will start in second place for Ferrari, and Pierre Gasly will start in third place for Alpine. Goodness me. Charles Leclerc gives Carlos Sainz gives congratulations there to George Russell. And Charles Leclerc will start in fourth place, just outside of the podium positions. Max Verstappen starts in fifth place, just ahead of Lando Norris. They're going to be side by side on the grid tomorrow. That can be very entertaining indeed, because Lando Norris does need to close that gap, although he has kind of said that he thinks the championship is now done and dusted. So Lando Norris will start in sixth behind. Yuki Tsunoda starts in seventh place. You normally celebrate that for RB, you know, we'd normally be saying, Yuki Tsunoda, what a stunning drive, seventh place. But when Pierre Gasly's third, suddenly is in a very different scenario, isn't it? Hulkenberg will start in ninth place as well. Sorry, Oscar Piastri in eighth, missed him out. Hulkenberg in ninth, and Lewis Hamilton will start just inside of the point scoring places in 10th. The other drivers that we lost, Esteban Ocon will start in 11th, Kevin Magnussen 12th, Zhou Guanyu 13th, Colapinto 14th at the moment, but a big job for the Williams team to put that car back together again. So we'll see what Colapinto and the Williams team will be. Maybe they'll have to start from the pit lane. It was quite a big shunt. Imagine there's some damage done, some considerable parts inside of that Williams car. And Liam Lawson also dropped out in Q2. He was the slowest man in Q2 qualifying. He'll start 15th, but he will start ahead. Sergio Perez, who dropped out in Q1, starts in 16th place. And then Fernando Alonso starts in 17th, Alex Albon 18th, Valtteri Bottas 19th, and Lance Stroll will start at the back of the pack. Ouch indeed. Someone please explain why quali is on a Friday, because the race is on a Saturday. So, does that explain it? Not really. just because they wanted it to be, effectively. I think races on a Saturday are going to become more and more popular. That's for another day. I'm going to leave you there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And as I say, we're going to be live again tomorrow for the Vegas Grand Prix. Could we see back-to-back podiums for Alpine? Could we see George Russell get a win for Mercedes, consolidate himself as the future of that Mercedes team? Or will we see Carlos Sainz in the top spot once again for Ferrari? We'll have to wait and see. Thank you guys again. I will see you next time.